see prophecies fulfilling every day, and the signs of the times, they're appearing everywhere. I can almost hear our Father saying, son, go get your children. Is that the midnight cry? The bride of Christ will rise when Jesus is by the comfort of his children. The day shall
Energy crisis is over. Caleb Botts, our student minister, is tapping into a valuable resource of energy, our youth. We're teaching them life skills, such as how to clean up your room,
Oh, there you go. There you go, Shelby. Good. Good.
how to clean up your plate,
How would you know what to do?
There you go, Adam. There you go. All right, come on. We got this. Come on, Shelby. You got it.
how to apply God's Word,
We want you guys obviously to embrace a personal and intimate relationship with Christ. But we also want you guys to know that when you guys are going through school, we understand that sometimes it's different. Sometimes we get into that habit of trying to impress other people or wanting to be a certain way and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what God looks at. That's not what's important to God. What's important to God is how we are, how our hearts are, right?
I've joined the youth every Sunday morning for Sunday school and every Thursday night for Ignite at Immanuel Baptist Church.
in Luke chapter 10, in verses 25 through 37. We've been talking about getting outside the box. And the whole thing about getting outside the box, ladies and gentlemen, is becoming the church that God intends us to become. Not saying that we haven't done anything right, because we have. We wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't done it the way that God wanted us to do it. But thinking outside the box makes us become a healthy church. We talked about the church itself. We talked about evangelism. And I want to say to you from the very beginning this morning, I'm very impressed and I'm excited that we had so many people sign up for the Barnabas groups after the first week that it was mentioned. The Barnabas groups are groups that we're going to put together that are going to go out and evangelize into the streets. We call it taking it to the streets because that's what we're going to do. We were talking in Sunday school this morning that we need to be more like Christ, and Christ was definitely an outside-the-box thinker. Christ knew in his time when he was here on this earth that he couldn't find who he needed to find staying inside the tabernacle. So he went out to where they were. He found out where they were, and he went to them. And that's what he meant here. The gentleman that replied to Jesus' question was, he said, the one that showed mercy on the man that was left to die. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. So ladies and gentlemen, what I'm preaching to you in these messages is nothing different than what Jesus actually did and what he preached. And I know everybody in this room has heard on many occasions people will say, what would Jesus do? And we've heard that, and there's bracelets, and there's signs, and there's things like that of what would Jesus do. My thinking is, what did Jesus do? What did he do? Well, that is what we're preaching. What didn't he do? Is a question we need to ask. And what did he do? Because that is what we're to follow. In Matthew 9:36, it says, when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. He was moved with compassion. Matthew 14:14 says, Jesus went forth, saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. Matthew 15:32 says, then Jesus called his disciples unto him, and he said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days, and they have nothing to eat, and I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint on the way. That is where the story of the feeding of the 5,000 plus. The disciples, see, they were in the box thinkers, and they were saying, Jesus, this is too many to feed. Let's just send them on home and let them deal with it themselves. And see, Jesus was moved with compassion, and he says, you guys can think that way, but I'm going to think outside the box. I'm God, and I know I can take care of them. We're going to take care of all of them right here. I'm not sending them away. Man, I've got them here. I got their attention, and boy, did he get their attention. Amen. He's an outside-the-box thinker. Now, I have been thrilled with, thank you for letting me have a great week this week. Everybody's starting to understand, I think, what we're saying. And I want this to be very clear in the Barnabas groups and everything that we're going to be planning, this Saturday night thing and all of that. This is going to take time. This is not something we're going to rush into. It's not something that we're going to just do. Folks, we are going to train. We're going to teach. You know, when I was involved with the Billy Graham Crusades, they sent out teams to churches, and those teams would come to the churches, and they would take weeks to train you in what to do. So when the crusade would come, everybody would be ready to do what they were supposed to do, and the crusades would go off very well. And it was successful. That's the thing that we're going to do here. We're going to train people. So even if you don't know what to do, or you don't know a lot about it, just sign up. And if we start training and you don't like it, and it's not you, then that's fine. There's nobody going to look at you any differently. That's out there in the foyer. People have been signing up. I want all those names. I want all them numbers that are empty on that sheet to be covered, because we want this to be something that we're going to do. We're going to train, and we're going to get out. We're going to take it to the streets. Matthew 20:34. So Jesus had compassion on them, touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Mark 1:41. Jesus was moved with compassion. He put forth his hand and touched him, and saith unto him, I will be thou clean. And that was talking about the lepers. Mark 9:22. This was the demon-possessed boy. Oftentimes he cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. I love Psalm 145:8. The Lord is gracious, and I love this part. He's full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. Folks, how many times do we think God is this mad God, this angry God, this big God that's just waiting over top of us with a hammer to pound us whenever we do something wrong? That is the mindset of many people. They think God is this angry God. But as I just read to you in Psalm 145, he's full of compassion. He's full of mercy. Jesus not only preached that, but Jesus lived it. And folks, listen to me. I love everybody in this room, but I'm not going to follow you. I'm going to follow Jesus. Because he gives us the greatest example of what we should be doing. Not just as a church, ladies and gentlemen, but as individuals. Being moved with compassion. I was at the store the other day, and there was this older lady that was in front of us, and she was struggling. She was in one of those, you drive around in the store and stuff, and she was struggling. And there was a younger couple that was in front of me, that was behind her, and she was struggling with trying to get bags and put them in the basket and try to, do this. And I was just standing there waiting and watching to see what this younger couple was going to do. You know what they were doing? They would turn around, they were laughing at her. Well, then she's going out the door and she dropped something. There's the lady that was standing at the door didn't pick it up, didn't, help her out. She just stood there. And I thought, really? So I got out of line and I went over and I picked it up and I put it in her basket. And I went on out the door with her and helped her to her car. I left the line. I put my stuff down. I left the line because I felt like that needed to be done. And she said, I'm not saying that to boost myself up. I'm just saying that's a compassionate moment. And some people sit there and they don't look at that and they don't, we live in a world that is full of hate anymore. We live in a world that is full of themselves and not everybody else. And see, that's exactly what took place with the Good Samaritan. Exactly. This man was beaten. He was robbed. He was beaten. He was left to die. Nobody cared about him. The Levite went by. The priest went by. They were not going to touch him because of rules and regulations and laws. They didn't want to become dirty themselves. But here comes this Good Samaritan along, and he sees the need, and he has compassion on this man. And not only does he take care of this man, but he uses his own resources. He uses his own stuff, and he takes him into town, he puts him in a hotel, and he goes up to the clerk and he says, listen, if it costs more for him to stay here and get healed, I'll be back and I'll pay on it. That's having compassion. And see, we live in a world that is totally the opposite of that anymore. I love the story. How many of you remember the story of the adulterous woman who was caught in the very act? How many of you remember that story? And she was brought to Jesus. Remember that? And I read several scriptures to you how Jesus was moved with compassion when he saw things. I love the story. I know I've said this a couple of weeks ago or whatever, but I love the story of Zacchaeus. I love that story because Jesus showed compassion to Zacchaeus. And I was listening to the sermon that Caleb sent my way, and I was listening to it last night, and I was sitting there, and I was getting charged up because I was thinking, man, this is what it's all about. Even mega churches, pastors, God is moving in their lives and saying, listen, even though we have all of this, there's so much more to do. If you can't see it, ladies and gentlemen, in our weather, in our news, in the things that's happening, Jesus Christ is coming soon. Amen. He's coming soon. And when Jesus said, hey, the harvest is now, it's here. You have a saying that it's days later. I'm telling you, it's now. There's time, it's a time to work now. Because Jesus Christ is coming. I think about that story about the adulterous woman. And I started thinking about that this week as I was studying this. And I started to pin down some thoughts. When we read this story, it appears that some pretty religious people came together for the sole purpose of not only ridding their community of the influence of this woman, but also to trick Jesus to the extent that they could find him guilty of breaking the law and thereby have him condemned. One of the things that has always bothered me about this story is that the man who was also caught in the act was somehow not to be condemned as the woman was. And somehow his sin was not as bad as hers. Somehow the scribes and Pharisees were able to overlook and even forgive his sin, whereas they condemned her for hers. Same sin. To me, same sin equals two different people, equals two different judgments, according to this story. We might call this a double standard, except it was pronounced by the people who were supposed to be the teachers of the law. These were the preachers. These were the ones you were supposed to be able to trust when it came to handing down the judgments for not obeying the Word of God. But apparently there is a different judgment for the man that was caught in the very same act that the woman was. Maybe the man was somebody that was of influence. Maybe he was big. Maybe he was a big giver in the church. Maybe he was somebody's important brother or cousin. Maybe, have you ever thought about this? Maybe he was a Pharisee or scribe himself. Who knows? The Bible doesn't tell us who he was, only that the religious people only sought out to offend the woman and have her killed and not offend the man. Now it's important to understand something about God and sin in us. And that is, if one is guilty of a certain sin, then all are guilty of it and they have done it too. There's no double standard in the Word of God. When it comes to it, if two people have sinned in the same way, they are both guilty of that sin, according to the eyes of God. But evidently, this is not understood by the man who brought the adulterous woman to Jesus' feet. And I started thinking about this. If I said double standards, does anyone know what I'm talking about? If you've been in church for any length of time, you know what I'm saying. Can I say that double standards in a church plague a church? Nobody likes a double standard. And let me just tell you, neither does Jesus Christ. Here's how I know. Verse 7, so when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, he who is without sin among you, cast the first stone. That's what he said to them. So just to let you know right off the bat that any of them that had no sin, or they didn't have to worry about casting that first stone. He never tried to protect the woman. He never contested their law. He never said that the law might be too extreme. But in his wisdom, he saved the life of this woman by reminding all of them that was standing in front of her, and all the Pharisees and all the religious people of that time that gathered that day to condemn her sin. He reminded them that they are without sin, or they are with sin. That's what he wanted to remind them. But here's what I love about Jesus in that story. He was the only one without sin. Amen? Amen. He was the only one who had no sin in his life, who could have fulfilled the law. But instead of picking up a stone and even speaking ill towards this woman, he simply forgave her. And he said, "Where are your accusers?" And she said, "There is none." And Jesus said, "You got it. There is none, and neither do I condemn you. Go, and what? Sin no more." Don't you love that? I love the very fact that Jesus, who was the one out of everybody that could have condemned her, he was the one that actually could have picked up a stone and fulfilled the law by stoning her to death. He did not try to protect her at any time. He just spoke the truth. And what he did was he said, "Listen, how many of you that are standing here with stones in your hands is standing here without any sin in your life?" And I got this feeling, being Jesus who he was, I had this feeling that the Pharisees and the Sadducees, some of them were standing there and they were murmuring. I got a feeling some of them were sitting there going, "What he doesn't know won't hurt him." And that's when I got a feeling that Jesus stooped down and he started writing their sin in the ground. I had a feeling that's what happened. And you know what happened from that point on? I guess he does know. Gotta get rid of that rock. You see what I'm saying? And I love the fact that the one who could have taken her life, could have condemned her, asked her, "Ma'am, where are your accusers?" She said, "There is none. They've all dropped the rocks." He said, "Exactly. Neither do I. Go and sin no more. Go and sin no more. Go and do likewise. Go. I have to go, but if you need more money, I'll come back and take care of you." You know what that is, ladies and gentlemen? That's compassion. That's getting out of the box. And that's compassion. You see, the thing is I love this fact. If there's one thing that I know beyond a shadow of doubt, if there's one thing that is absolutely in my understanding today, it is that I'm without a doubt a sinner. Amen. I am. And so are you. And I am fully aware this morning that I am completely dependent on the mercy and the grace of God for every breath that I take. I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. I have no bragging rights whatsoever. I have no reason to think myself better than anyone else that's in this room. I am like the Apostle Paul when he said, I'm the chiefest of sinners. So if any of you are looking to me to condemn someone here today, you're out of luck. I dropped the rock because I can't. Understand something today. The servant is no better than his master. And our master became our servant. Amen? And if our master has become our servant, who are we? And I'll tell you who this is. This is Jesus Christ that we're talking about. And it's Jesus Christ who said these words, "Judge not that ye might be judged." For what with judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. Those are the words of Jesus Christ. If there's anybody that can judge anybody, it would be him. He did not judge Zacchaeus, did he? He did not judge this woman, this adulterous woman. He did not judge the Samaritan woman at the well. What he did was show them compassion. Showed them the love of God. Where they all went away and said, there's something different about that man. There's something different about that man, and I want you to come and see what's different about that man. I think of the woman that I helped the other day. I think about her face. I can't get her face off of my mind after I helped her. Helped her put her bags in her car. Helped her get out of the cart. Helped her get into her car. I took the cart back for her. I can't get out of my mind her face. Her face of, I can't believe he's doing this. And for a minute I thought she was going to tip me. She said, what can I give you? I said, I'm just giving you the love of Jesus. Amen. That's all I'm giving. And that's all I said to her. Now, I don't know if that woman's saved. I don't know where she is spiritually. I don't know. But all I did was just show her kindness and compassion. And I think I made her day. Because she's not going to get that anywhere else. She has to get it from people who have Christ in their lives. Amen. You see, the Pharisee, the scribe, and the Levite who walked by that man laying on the street, oh, they were full of the Word. They were full of rules and regulations. They were full of themselves. They had no relationship with God whatsoever. Their relationship was about them. And it was about rules. It was in the box thinking on their part. The Samaritan came along. And this is a story that's been told by Jesus. The Samaritan comes along and he has the out-of-box thinking. He's not thinking about being unclean. He's not thinking about any rule or law. He's a Samaritan. Remember, they don't like Samaritans. He's not thinking about any of that. He's thinking, hey, my brother's hurting. And I need to help him. I love the very part of all of these stories that you see in the Word of God. Having compassion and making something happen. I told you last week, remember I told you to look at the person next to you and say, you matter. Everybody in this room matters. And I think about all of that. I love the fact that all of us in this room, we may not be famous in the world or whatever, but we are loved and we matter to God. Amen. I was watching a documentary the other night, and it was about 2000, the September 11th, and the tragedy that took place. And I thought about all of that situation. Prior to that Tuesday morning on September 11th, 2001, life was normal in New York City. Thousands of people went in and out of that World Trade Center buildings without thought or concern every day. Neither you nor I or the rest of the world paid much attention to different people. Al-Qaeda, all of those things. We didn't pay much attention to that. Until 4 passenger airliners were hijacked by 19 Al-Qaeda terrorists. Two of the planes, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, they were crashed into the North and South Towers, respectively the World Trade Center. Within an hour and 42 minutes, both 110-story towers collapsed. In total, the attacks on 9/11 claimed the lives of 2,996 people, including the 19 hijackers. It was the deadliest incident for firefighters and law enforcement officers in the history of the United States, with 343 and 72 killed respectively. Until this day, we really never heard of the Taliban. We never heard of Al-Qaeda. We heard a little bit of Osama bin Laden. So it didn't really matter, but neither did that matter in most of the world. Everybody went to work that day not expecting anything like that. And all of a sudden, thousands of lost and trapped lives became the focus of the entire world's attention. That would last until October 6th, when the last federal rescue team would leave Ground Zero. I said all that to say this. We don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what the next breath holds, or the next day, or whatever it is. And folks, I'm telling you this, we need to be about the Father's business. And we need to have compassion for people in so many different ways. Maybe it's not normal to you. Maybe it does. You don't feel good about this, or you don't feel good about doing this, or whatever. That's fine. We're not going to force anybody in this church to do something that you don't feel comfortable in doing. God wouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that. But we do, as Jesus said, the harvest is here. The harvest is now. It's time to get to work. But the laborers are few. And so what we need, and I would love to see, not just Immanuel Baptist Church, but I would love to see all the other churches that are around us in this area, in this city. I was driving down Main Street yesterday, and literally I saw a young lady who was skin and bones walking down the street, and she just collapsed. Next thing I know is I heard sirens going. I don't know what happened to her, but she just collapsed. And I'm thinking it's probably drugs. I'm thinking something like that has just happened. We have first responders here today. We have police officers that come to our church. They see this every day. Our city is infested with drugs. Our city is infested with satanic influences. Our city needs Jesus Christ. Amen. And ladies and gentlemen, I want Immanuel Baptist to be a part of not reaching people to grow this church. I want us to have compassion on people, period. Because that's what Jesus did. He walked around in the Palestine area. He went to where they were. He reached them. He touched their lives. He didn't tell them, hey, on this day, you need to be in the upper room. He didn't tell them that. All he cared about was winning them to Christ. All he cared about was their soul. He had compassion for them. And he wanted them to be saved. He said, I have come to seek and to save that which is lost. And that's what he did. He left the church growing business to the 11 disciples. But he wasn't there to build the church at that time. He was there to save souls and to have compassion. Ladies and gentlemen, my heart, my compassion is to see people get touched by Jesus. It's to see people's lives change. If they decide to go to another church, that's fine with me. I just want their soul saved. I want their lives changed. I want them to know that Jesus Christ loves them and they matter to Him. Would I love to see them come here? Absolutely. Would I love to get them plugged into things that we're going to be doing? Absolutely. But the thing is I want them to have compassion. I want us to have compassion. I don't want us judging people. I want us to have compassion. None of us in this room have the right to judge. But we have everything to be compassionate about. If you would, bow your heads, eyes closed.